Good afternoon all and welcome to this webinar. I am Michael Short and I'm the Business Unit Director here at the PBS Centre of Excellence, part of the Yorkshire Care Group. I am indeed very pleased to be with you today and take you on a whistle-stop overview of what my passion is and my vocation, and this is being positive behaviour support and how it genuinely improves quality of life for those people that we support in our services. We're going to be covering during this webinar the understanding of what PBS is. There are organisations that may believe or think that they're doing PBS in services when in fact they're doing behaviour management processes, and we'll look at the difference of these two and the benefits of both models as well. We're going to be identifying the 3-tier approach of positive behaviour support, understanding why and what improving quality of life means to both us and to the individuals that we support, introduce the principles of active support, which is an essential element of positive behaviour support and something that we call capable environments, one of the aspects we'll look at later on. Then we're going to be talking about the language that we use. Language is so important and we need to start to consider the language used to refer and to record about people. After all, whose story is it anyway? A little bit of history around PBS. Well, PBS has gained so much positive, wonderful traction in the last 30 years, especially as an approach to supporting people with learning disabilities. But part of that reason is that it's continued to develop, to be researched, was as an alternative to some negative approaches that have been historically used. It's not the same as restraint training. There's a distinguishable difference between positive behaviour support and restraint. PBS is the preventative, proactive model. It doesn't teach you in any way, shape or form restrictive practices. The whole purpose is to eliminate and reduce. That said, PBS fully supports the standards of the Restraint Reduction Network and the BILS certified trainings process. Where are we now then? Well, PBS has indeed been recommended by the government in a vast range of good practice guidelines following the Winterford View scandal, including Transforming Care Agenda, Department of Health, Skills for Health, Skills for Care, NHS England and the Local Government Association themselves. And we also now have a nationally recognised PBS competency framework and PBS training standards. If you're considering commissioning PBS training and then putting it into practice, strongly recommend to check the programme is aligned to the competency standards, because that's a national set of standards that's approved and recognised by us all. And to show the values base and the level and the content is as indeed described to the learners and you as the commissioners, that it does meet that framework. Skills for Care lead on the PBS peer review, of which we are fully involved with, and those reviewed as meeting the standards are awarded with the review stamp, offering providers and individuals the assurance of a good quality programme has indeed been peer reviewed and being provided to you. In 2022 we had the publication of the State of the Nation report, and from that we had a brand new UK-based definition for positive behaviour support. PBS is all about improving quality of life for people and all those around them. It's values and human rights based, and it's evidence based, and it's an approach of helping people to have that really good quality of life. It's based upon 12 key components made up of what we call rights and values, meaning simply we focus on rights and good lives and what that looks like for individuals. The theory and the evidence base, meaning the ways to understand behaviour, the behavioural science behind it, the analytical tools and the ideas, the needs and the experiences of the people that we support, the processes and the strategy, using a systematic and a whole organisational approach to high quality support. It's not just a single plan or a single note in someone's folder. It is a holistic implementation across your business. So the 12 key components, in essence, it's about improving the quality of life for those people and everyone around them. It works by developing and building skills. It does not use any punitive and punishment measures whatsoever. Practitioners as an MDT work in partnership with each other, but more importantly with the person and the people that are important to them. All behaviour, we recognise, and our message is all behaviour is for a reason, and behaviours of concern or distress, historically referred to as challenging, they're absolutely no different. PBS and the science of behaviour assessment analysis uses tools to try and identify, describe, predict and change that behaviour, understanding what that person is communicating through that behaviour, what is it serving them, and we'll talk more about the functions behaviour can serve a little bit later on. We recognise that other complementary evidence-based approaches which support change behaviour can and should be included within PBS plans. PBS only uses decisions based upon facts and research. It cannot work on opinions or hearsay. When we're supporting individuals, a formal assessment is carried out and it's made to create a clear, structured plan of action. What practitioners do is directly informed by what they know about that individual. The behaviour support plan, in simple terms, should tell people what to do proactively to prevent the behaviour of concern or distress from happening, and then manage it well reactively if it does. The plan should also make sure people are actively supported over the long term to maintain their quality of life and for those around them. The plan and process should be multi-component in its strategies and always be correctly implemented, monitored and evaluated. We've already mentioned that the overall aim of PBS is to improve quality of life for a person and everyone around them. PBS provides the right support for a person to lead a meaningful life, learn new skills without the unnecessary restrictions. It's not simply about getting rid of behaviours of distress or concern, but it's looking at introducing different strategies for that person to use as possible alternatives. With the right support at the right time, the likelihood of that behaviour, which is concerning or distress, is reduced. It's part of a whole organisational approach and implementation of the Capable Environments Framework. Again, we're going to look at this a little bit later on. A set of principles and inclusion, especially in relation to creating opportunities for increased community presence, stronger networks of relationships, greater participation in ordinary activities, making a greater number of choices, developing skills, maintaining existing skills, enhancing personal dignity and respect. I would now like to play you a short video which hopefully provides a further explanation as to what PBS is and what's involved.
What is positive behaviour support? Sometimes things just don't go my way, and nobody seems to get what's going wrong for me. And if I try to get my message across, bam!
You get labelled with a behaviour of concern.
Positive behaviour support could help.
What's that?
When something is wrong, positive behaviour support works to make life better by finding the root of the problem and making a plan to solve it. Multi-element behaviour support, or MEBS, is a model of positive behaviour support, and it does the same thing.
He's behaving badly, that's the problem.
Or maybe Dave is behaving like that because of the problem. PBS works out what the root of the problem is.
How? It could be anything.
PBS can use tools like a wheel of optimal living to look for possible problems in the person's day-to-day life. The people they spend time with, the places, the activities, skills, and their physical comfort. PBS does a formal assessment of all these things to work out what is causing a problem for the person. The assessment gathers information all about the person's life by talking to all the important people in it. Most important of all, PBS talks to the person themselves to find out what is good and bad about their life.
Does PBS only look at when bad behaviours are happening?
PBS does look at the behaviour to learn how to help calm things. And it looks at times when the behaviour doesn't happen to learn what works well.
What do you do with all that information?
We make a positive behaviour support plan.
Well, I hope the plan includes punishments for bad behaviour.
No punishments, nothing aversive that the person wouldn't like.
No punishments? Humble jump.
It's actually based on science and uses applied behaviour analysis techniques.
It'll never work.
There's loads of scientific evidence which says it works.
I'd still prefer the usual treatments that are used.
PBS can incorporate other treatments.
Best of both worlds.
Well, how do you know if it's working?
PBS evaluates the plan to be sure it is working. So that's it, guys, the 10 ingredients of positive behaviour support.
Number 1, there's a message in the behaviour. Number 2, we use assessment to find the message. Number 3, we use multiple sources of information. Number 4, the person is always at the centre of the plan. Number 5, we look closely at the person's day-to-day life. Number 6, we make a PBS plan. Number 7, there's nothing aversive in the plan. Number 8, the treatments are based on science. Number 9, we include other treatments. And number 10, we evaluate.
What do you think?
Yay!
We've used within the presentation already the terminologies behaviour of concern and behaviour of distress. But what do we mean by that? Well, there's two widely recognised and used definitions of behaviour of concern. Historically, a lot of people use that terminology of challenging behaviour. But as you can see, the two on the screen, Emerson, the Royal College of Society, psychiatrists, and the Royal Speech and Language therapists, in essence are saying the same things, that it's where a behaviour is described as culturally abnormal. The intensity, the frequency and its duration puts that person themselves or others at risk, and it's likely to jeopardise their access to usual community settings which you and I would have access to on our daily basis. The term challenging behaviour was introduced to replace a variety of terms which suggested that the problem was actually located within the person themselves. Again, over time, challenging behaviour has become misused. Now it's often used as a diagnostic label, leading to stigmatisation or exclusion, that this person has challenging behaviour. And this means that children and adults who are given this label are often actually denied the right to live an ordinary life in their local communities, and generally placed in institutional settings, often, as we know, unfortunately, a long way away from homes and families due to the lack of support and services that can meet their needs in the communities. Behaviours of concern or distress always happen for a reason, and maybe actually the only way that person can communicate an unmet need. PBS helps us to understand the reason for that behaviour so we can actually better meet people's needs, enhance their quality of life, and reduce the likelihood that behaviour will happen again. When working in services, practitioners will usually try to triangulate, and all that basically means is try to identify the behaviour being recorded and occurring across 3 different pieces of data, and that might be an ABC, it might be incident reports, and staff interviews. That identifies that focus behaviour would be one of interest, and the one which is probably resulting in the person missing out on education, missing out on social activities, missing out on friendship, all those things that brings a good quality of life to people. I think it's clear now that PBS is that approach to supporting people to live that good life. and indeed also to prevent or reduce the need for people to use their behaviours to communicate their distress or concern. PBS is that framework for learning about a person, their support needs, and working with them to build the support and the systems that they need to have that good quality of life. PBS itself is grounded in person-centred practice, and indeed it seeks to protect a person's human rights. It's a values-based approach. It is focused on systems change and skills development for the person and indeed you as providers. It utilises behaviour science and other evidence-based approaches, therapies, techniques and strategies to support that quality of life improvement and address those behaviours of distress or concern. We know that it's emerged from behavioural science, and it remains the evidence base of what we do and how we do it today, from the values around social movements and human rights. When people present with these behaviours of concern or distress, it is the environment which fully doesn't meet that person's needs. And using PBS, we target these particular contexts and work in co-production with the individuals, their families, support teams and the wider MDT to ensure that we truly are informed and have a really good and better understanding of that person, so we can work with them to develop them skills, the communication, and make the environmental changes the person requires so they can better communicate their needs more effectively and reliably, rather than using those behaviours which cause them and others concern or distress. We support at the PBS Centre of Excellence, via positive behaviour support, people to be able to live in the real world, live ordinary lives in their own communities, whereby they're seen as capable and valued, like us. Have relationships, go to the pub, the shop, everything that you and I do, and simply to be happy. Elements which are important to people are to have that community presence, to be seen as a valued member of their own community and the wider society, to be able to have choice of who I want in my home, when I want people in my home, how long I want them in my home for, when I want the curtains shut, when I want to go to bed. We take all these choices for granted, but often these are a lot of choices, simple ones, that are taken away from the people that we support. They deserve respect. We can develop skills, therefore they developing their own individual competence, but also confidence. And if they have that confidence and competence, you'll see an increased participation within activities of daily living, social events, just the normal things, inverted commas, that you and I take for granted each and every day. If we think of PBS being represented as a hierarchy of needs and supports, we can then break it down into 3 tiers. Tier 1 being implemented for everybody as an organisational approach. Tier 2 then is only required by some individuals, and while only a few need Tier 3. PBS can be implemented, and it is being implemented extremely successfully in a range of settings, including residential, small group homes, schools, family homes and other community settings. It can be implemented to support people with a variety of needs, and that includes adults and children, young people with or without intellectual or development difficulties, typical developing children and young people but have got other emotional and behavioural difficulties. It might be trauma informed. People with other neurological conditions such as brain injury, dementia, who may display behaviour difficulties. Tier 1 is the whole organisational approach, and that's where the whole organisation understands behaviour, serves a function, resolving the day-to-day problems as and when they happen, active support, enabling and capable environments that don't challenge the individual in the first place, having all staff trained and understanding what positive behaviour support is, and implementing best practice as practice leadership. Then tier 2 is your targeted support, such as understanding through a functional assessment of what the person is communicating through their behaviour and what function it's serving. We're going to be looking at what we mean by function in a short while. We're going to look at what context does it occur as in a tier 2, what environment, what situation, and what are the triggers. Think about triggers. Do we know what ours are? Generally, the answer will be yes. Have a think for a moment. What are some of your triggers? Triggers are those things that get us upset, angry, frustrated, scared. Have a think. What we generally find when we're asking us to think about our triggers, they're generally no different from those people that we provide services to, that we support. That tier 3 is specialised support, where a full enhanced functional assessment is completed, and that's got to entail robust and detailed observations and assessments using behavioural science assessment tools. Therefore, they'll have specialist behavioural interventions, partnership working with the whole MDT, and more frequent and robust monitoring and review will take place. One question I often get asked is, does everyone need to have a PBS plan? In simple terms, the answer is no. Not everybody does. If there's an odd occasion where someone has a behaviour which is quite concerning, and there's no restrictive practices or restrictions applied to that person, that can simply be supported by a behaviour management plan, because there's no data, no science behind it. Then a simple organisational risk assessment will enable you to continue that plan. A PBS plan would come into place at tier 2 if it meets either of the definitions that we've previously looked at. Sometimes people display behaviours of concern or distress because something isn't going well and needs changing. And what does PBS support here? Well, it's an approach to understanding that environment and the systems around a person, and to identify the support that needs to happen, what changes need to be made within those systems. And when we talk about systems, we simply mean a person's home, a community, its school, their workplace, all of the environments that are important to that individual. A PBS practitioner will start with identifying the person's values, what's important to them, what's important for them, how they want to live their lives, and will work closely with the person to ensure the PBS process is aligned to what is important to and for them. The practitioner then will develop a targeted intervention plan, a written document, in other words, that includes support and intervention strategies that help the person to achieve their goals. It's a PBS process, because PBS is far more than just writing a plan. It's a process of listening and learning how best to help that person reach their goals. It involves working closely with the person and other stakeholders such as family, support staff, teachers, other practitioners, and that's to make sure that the strategies are implemented as intended to be. It involves all stakeholders thinking flexibly and about the needs of the person and their supporters. It involves stakeholders looking for information to help to make decisions about what to do and when. And it's evidence-based, it's evidence-informed practice, which means that decisions are based on evidence and not beliefs or assumptions about an individual, or indeed what might be best for all the individuals. We don't always have the answers, but you know what? By working together, it is possible to improve a person's quality of life and those around them. When working with the PBS model, we've already mentioned that our role is to create environments which are capable rather than challenging for these people we support, and it's part of that tier 1 approach. It can include factors for the social, physical, and indeed the organisational environment as well needs to be considered. The PBS model looks at creating what is known as capable environments through the Capable Environments framework. And it's about building a positive relationship and rapport. And those are fundamental elements of PBS and one of the building blocks of the PBS framework. Rapport is, well, that's all about having a good, trusting relationship. This being built upon a common understanding. It's a professional relationship, meaning that close relationships between people do develop. It's a sense of connection that enables this to happen. There is a need for good, clear and respectful communication. These help us move the focus away from the individual and move it towards focus on changing the environment around them. High quality, capable environments include those positive social interactions, support for communication, support for participating in meaningful activity, provision of consistent and predictable environments, honouring personalised routines and activities that support to establish and or maintain relationships with family and friends, provide opportunities for choice, encourages independence, personal care and health support which meets an immediate need when identified. Staff know and support the person's personal and health needs, and they recognise when they're in pain or discomfort and seek that immediate support. Effective support from management is essential, as is the whole organisational approach. So what does a good quality of life mean? Well, it's subjective really, isn't it? But if you have a think about the things that are important to you, that gives you a good quality of life, and then relate that to some of the people that you support, is there going to be much difference? When we're talking about quality of life, we really need to know the person. There are tools to assess a person's quality of life out there, and if anyone would like a copy at the end, please just drop me an email and we'll forward these to you. But it's about recognising the importance of developing relationships and rapport, the person's individual history, family and social context, the person's interpersonal style, their likes and their dislikes, their current skills, general skills and their abilities, their preferred communication method, the current communication skills, and any trauma history. We all have things which are important to us and therefore provide us with a good quality of life. This could be work, so we have money, nice things, items or good holidays. It is essential that there's an equal split when you're doing care planning for person-centred care, because there should be a true 50-50 max split of what's important to and what's important for a person. We can look to build upon existing or developing new skills which will further enhance independence and therefore that person's quality of life. We've mentioned several times already throughout this talk that positive behaviour support fully supports the human rights, and some of the legislation to demonstrate those examples are on the screen. So if you think about the Human Rights Act and Article 2, the right to life, this is about no excessive force, where a person may actually die given the wrong medication, not doing something that is written in a care plan which was essential, or doing something you shouldn't have done which results in a person's death. Article 3, prohibition from torture, inhumane and degrading treatment. That's about not being rough with people, using the least restrictive, using positive language, no punishment or punitive measures, no restraint, or if needed, as an absolute last resort, then it must be the least restrictive at all times. Article 5, the right to liberty and security. This is not about stopping them going out. It's about enabling them to go out with the right level of support to make them feel safe, with positive, trusting relationships. Not threatening to use restraint or to say, you can't go out because you've done this. The right to respect privacy and family life is Article 5. The Mental Capacity Act itself, another piece of legislation, is always about the least restrictive option and always being in the best interest of that individual. All these legislations are about keeping people safe while maintaining positive risk taking. We have the Health and Safety Law, Health and Safety at Work Act. That's both relevant for employers and indeed employees. We both have joint responsibilities under that legislation, as we do for carrying out and producing positive behaviour support plans. We've already talked a lot about what PBS is and does, so let's briefly look at what it doesn't do. Remember, PBS, being a human rights and values-based approach, does not include any punitive measures. It does not use punishment, does not include things that cause pain, shame or fear. It doesn't involve doing things that do not promote people's human rights, and certainly doesn't involve any unnecessary restrictions. So we've mentioned a couple of times the word functions of behaviour. Well, functional assessments are actually the cornerstone of PBS, and it involves comprehensive evaluations that include input from the individual, the family, the MDT of professionals. The collaborative approach ensures that we have a deep understanding of that person's behaviour, their sensory needs, their trauma, their life history and environmental triggers. So for example, if someone is repeatedly hitting a light switch, the assessment might reveal it's a sensory need, a sensory issue, prompting adjustments such as a dimmer switch to alleviate that discomfort, which the person may be able to control themselves, more independent. If a person throws a TV remote across the room, they may be communicating they want the channel changing. We would then look to teach them how to do this themselves, again increasing their independence and removing the trigger. To carry out an effective functional assessment, we will be looking at, have all the initial needs been met of that individual? Have they been cleared of assessment for pain, discomfort, headache, toothache, abdominal pain due to constipation? When they present with behaviours and they're escalating, do they start talking negatively about themselves? Recognising and reacting to escalating behaviour is imperative to try and prevent that person reaching that crisis point, and that'll look different for each individual. And if they are to reach crisis point, are they a risk to themselves or others? Having a risk assessment in place for the individual's crisis point is fundamental to mitigating harm to themselves and others, and any property damage that may occur. When we talk about function, all we're talking about is what the person is getting from it. What is the reason the behaviour is happening in the first place? And the assessment is the process of gathering information about the situations to allow us to make an informed judgment about what we believe that function of behaviour might be. To support us identify behavioural functions, we use the SEAT acronym, and it helps us to identify the 4 most common behaviour functions, or otherwise reasons why people are seeking or avoiding behaviour happens. Take care though, because behaviour can serve in meeting more than one function. An example of that might be a person may bite as they don't want you there, so that would be escape. They also may bite if in pain and discomfort, and that might be sensory. Let's have a look at some of examples of the SEAT model. So S is that sensory we've just mentioned. This is where a person either is communicating via their behaviour that they're avoiding or they're seeking some form of stimuli. This includes pain as well, and because it's internalised, it's one of the most difficult ones to identify. Sensory does not involve social reinforcers because it's produced by their own reinforcements because it's internal. You can get to avoid sensory. A person gets sensory by brushing their hair because it makes them feel nice. They like to make loud noises or echoes, again because they like the sound and the vibrations. E is escape or avoidance, and this is where a person wants to avoid someone or something. It might be the environment, other people, or the person supporting them. It may be that they simply don't want to do a task that they've been asked to do, and it certainly works. It terminates or delays the unwanted event happening. A, we call this social attention, because when we read care plans, we tend to find out that documentation says people are demanding, they're simply seeking something. And we need to change that word in the narrative, don't we? A person may simply want attention from others. T, tangible. And this is where a person uses their behaviour to communicate that they want to gain access to an item or participation in an activity, for example. Tangible results in access to motivating item or stimuli. So, for example, you press the power button on a television to access a preferred show, and a person screams to receive a desired item or activity because they want to drive, for example, or a person wants to access preferred reinforcers, also known as rewards. Once we've identified the function of that behaviour, sensory, escape, social attention or tangible, it is then we can start to make changes to the environment to improve that person's quality of life. So identifying the function is essential. We can't just simply stop or take away a behaviour because of the simple fact the function will be unmet. We provide alternative ways for that individual to meet that function, which are more socially acceptable and normalised. We've talked about organisational and environmental changes, so let's have a look at changing the model of how we deliver our care. The hotel model, which is now old-fashioned, we know the model devalues and de-skills people because it's a historic institutionally styled service delivery where settings are generally mainly organised around the staffing needs and not actually those people receiving the support or care in the services. So when we talk about the hotel model of care, what you tend to find is you'll see staff generally interacting with the people, which doesn't promote autonomy. It's a bit like being in a hotel where they're waited on, and they don't have to participate in any activities of what we call normal everyday living, but indeed they're actually meaningful. So if we have a look at this circle here and the model, the vicious circle, then staff do most things for the individuals instead of creating opportunities. Individuals don't participate in valued activities and spend most of their time doing nothing. Staff perceive individuals generally as dependent. They don't spend time interacting with them or assisting individuals, and apprehensive indeed about trying new things and risk taking. Staff cannot think about goals or activities individuals can do, and they see their role generally as that domestic worker rather than an enabler. Now, if we stop to think for a moment about active support and positive levels of help, this is completely on the flip side of what we've just been discussing. Imagine you've got a day off work and you plan to do absolutely nothing tomorrow. What would your do nothing actually look like? Just have a think for a second. My doing nothing would look something like that. So, as you can see, doing nothing is actually doing lots of things. And if you didn't do these things, you would get up and wait to go to bed again. That's doing nothing. Active support requires us all change our mindset of how we actually deliver support. It's about seeing everything in life as an activity or an opportunity for that person to take part. Seeing things in steps and being able to do one step itself is an achievement for people. And to receive that celebration, that praise, it's enabling. Active support refers to the type of support provided that turns person-centred plans into person-centred action. It changes the style of support from caring for to working with. It promotes independence and supports people to take an active, living part in their own lives. It's a systematic approach that encourages participation in meaningful activities and social interactions for individuals of all abilities. It involves varied levels of help to ensure people can engage to fulfil their potential. In contrast to the hotel model, with active support, individuals are often engaged. Staff work with individuals, promoting independence. Tasks are adapted to be inclusive and activities are genuinely meaningful, focusing on quality of life. Engagement needs to be meaningful to have value for people, and it leads to more opportunities to do things and interact with other people. That's engagement. Instead of doing things for or to, we work with so they can take part in everyday activities regardless of their ability. This technique helps to give people that we support more control, improve confidence, increase independence, all having a positive impact upon quality of life. The starting point, though, is to assess the type of level of help each individual will need to participate in a range of activities. And you could do this using different types of prompting, either verbal, physical or visual. It's important to recognise that verbal has the least impact, generally speaking, and that is because you have to repeat it several times because it's generally forgotten after it's provided. The aim of active support is to create engagement, routines and opportunities for individuals to lead those fulfilled lives. To participate and contribute are all important to our self-esteem. The 4 important things to remember about active support is every moment has potential, little and often, graded assistance, move away from the hotel model of care, and maximising choice and control. PBS can support and does have a role in supporting you to meet CQC standards. Implementing the PBS framework seamlessly integrates with the Care Quality Commission's updated single assessment framework, which prioritises person-centred care, safety and effectiveness. For providers of learning disability service, PBS particularly plays a crucial role in meeting those enhanced regulatory standards. So if we look at safety, for example, PBS minimises the necessity for physical or chemical restraint by emphasising prevention, preventative measures and understanding the underlying causes of behaviours of concern or distress. Effectiveness, well, by applying evidence-based practices, PBS enhances the quality of life and reduces those behaviours of concern or distress, ensuring care is customised, person-centred, to each individual's specific needs. Caring, well, PBS guarantees that the care is respectful, dignified, responsive, in line with the focus of CQC on person-centred care and active involvement in decision making. Responsiveness, well, PBS adapts to the unique requirements of each person, prioritising their preferences and choices, which is a core component of the new framework. Well led, well, PBS fosters that culture of continuous improvement, learning and innovation, enabling providers to excel, to exceed CQC expectations and deliver that exceptional care. What we write, say and do is extremely important both to and for a person. When positive language is used, people tend to start feeling more positive, confident and ambitious about their future. Language can divide us who work in social care from the people who service us. Language is far more than just a means of communication because it can shape our perceptions, our attitudes and our actions. In social care, the language used can significantly impact individuals and how they are viewed and treated. Historically, social care has been dominated by clinical and deficit-focused language with an emphasis of what individuals can't do and the problems they are or they present. The narrative not only stigmatises but also limits opportunities or growth and for valued participation in communications and communities. Let's just consider some of the terms we've seen being used across the historic papers we've looked at within this presentation. Challenging behaviour. Well, that itself, without any context, is meaningless. It can depersonalise and de-individualise too. It does nothing at all to ask the question, why? It's got negative connotations, and people then see an individual as a danger, a risk, or to be fearful of, and it stigmatises that person. Placement is another one. It gives that impression of it being a temporary place to stay, not a home to live in. It gives a person a feeling of lacking of security. It feels lacking in care. Would you use this term with your family or friends? I want to now share with you a video produced by Oxford Family Support Network, and it's a great video because it shows this language being used in the context of two young ladies trying to work out, should we go out and who to invite on a night out, and they're using the words and the terms that we're all familiar with, that they refer to as service speak.
Hey, I was thinking, do you maybe fancy accessing the community this weekend?
Yeah, how about Friday night? We could access some mainstream leisure opportunities.
Do we have a driver on duty though, or do we need to access public transport?
No driver on, so let's do public transport. Oh, should we invite Sophie?
All her group home are having a shared activity night. Pizza and a film, I think. How about Sam?
Seriously? Do you not remember last time? His fluid intake was so excessive, he became very agitated and his behaviour was extremely challenging. I'm not sure I'd want to risk that again.
You're right.
Ooh, what about Priya? I haven't seen her since we went through our transition together though.
Oh, do you not know? She's moved out of county. She's got a new residential placement. She's sharing with 4 other service users. Not sure I fancy that. She doesn't know any of them.
Wow, that is such a risk. Which reminds me, we need to do a full risk assessment for this activity.
I'm on it. I'll check in with Amy and Tom too, see if they fancy a bit of mainstream inclusion.
It would be great to get both of us together.
I know. It'll be so lovely to have some
Positive interaction with our peers. I know, it's been too long.
How much of that sounds familiar to any of us? Would we use that language when we're talking to our friends or our relatives at home? Think about using familiar, positive language. It supports everyone to understand and to feel included. You know, just a few more terms, such as transition. Isn't that just a moving home? Placement? Well, isn't that a home? Service user, big discussion around this term at the moment. Perhaps people who use services, or ask the individual how they want to be referred to, probably their name. Challenging behaviour, behaviour of distress or concern. Demanding, change this to unmet need or requesting. Intervention, support strategy or support plan. Compliant, ooh, well, isn't this about participation or engagement? Non-compliant, consider using something like or writing. We need to look at alternative methods or requires additional support. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you've got some good takeaways from that. As an adjunct, the PBS Centre of Excellence training and consultancy aspect, we have our own training on PBS, which has been independently peer reviewed as part of the Skills for Care peer review process, and we're pleased to say it's been awarded gold. And we have special negotiated prices via the Yorkshire Care Alliance. Those taking that training are also eligible to claim against a new Adult Social Care Training and Development Fund, which is expected to open for claims in summer 24. If anyone wants any further information, please feel free to email me. My email is on the screen. It's been great having you all as part of the webinar, and if anyone has any additional queries or questions, feel free to email me and we'll do what we can to help. Thank you once again all.